This is a Heart and Hand production.
Hello and welcome back to Tactics Talk. I'm your host, Adam Thornton, and on today's show we've got a special guest. Marius Fischer joins us. Marius, welcome to Tactics Talk. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to talking to a Scottish guy. And it's better than I thought. I was a bit afraid that because I was in Scotland some years ago and, the language, I'm good at English, but it's different. But I think we can go along quite fine.
I'll try not to talk too quickly. Yeah.
Okay,
fine. So Marius, you are a performance analyst at Viborg FC in Denmark. Do you want to give us just a little bit of a background into, I guess, your introduction into football, first of all?
Yeah, so it started quite classic. I was a player, but not on the highest level, so probably wouldn't make it to professional football. My father was a good coach back in the years, so I think when the German football, the league pyramid was still a bit different. He was coaching in the second division, so it is a bit in the family. And then he just, my interest in coaching started quite early just because I was sitting on the bench sometimes when I was a kid. So it was just in my blood a bit. That's why I changed quite quickly to coaching. So it's not like, a lot of young coaches or young analysts or whoever, they say, I was injured and then I couldn't play anymore. No, I'm not injured. I just stopped playing at 26 or 27, not because I didn't like it, more like because I was not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
And I was coaching in a German academy on a good level, but even on this level, you don't really earn a lot of money. I was on the pitch like sometimes almost 6 days a week when we had 2 games, and that's really hard to convince your partner, your wife, to accept it if you don't get any money of it. And then COVID hit, and I was trying to maybe get into some other stuff, and I had a quite big Twitter account at that time, which got even bigger by COVID and working from home. So suddenly you got time for all these side quests that you want to do. So I had some connections that I built on, and I just made like a tweet. I'm looking for some remote work. I can do some analysis. At that point, I was not sure what I could do. It was more like, we can maybe come to that later, but all the stuff that I do on Twitter has nothing to do with what I do in the club. And then from Russia, there was actually also an offer from Scotland. Let me think about what club it was. I think it was it Ross County? Not sure. Any club in Scotland. They also wrote me, but I decided for working for Sochi in Russia. It was just like a bit opponent analysis. I was not involved in all the club environment. It was just like the head of analysis gave me some task, and I was more like his second arm or third arm. But that was not really fulfilling. It was a good learning process, and I also went to ZSK Moscow from there because the head of analysis got an offer and he took me with him, but I was too far away to really have an identification. And then I thought, okay, let's look for a new club in summer. And then I got in contact with Lars Friis, who was the head coach at Viborg at that time, and we had some talks, and then I went to Denmark, which is closer than Russia, of course, so I could go there for some contract talks. And from that point, I think it was 2021 May, it went all up since then, not just for the club who just got promoted, and then we played Europe in the second season, and then we nearly qualified again. We finished fourth last season, which is the best finishing of the club's history. But also personally, I came from being the lone analyst, just doing some opponent analysis, and being in Denmark maybe like every 6 or 7 weeks. To last year, I was there, I would say, 1/3 of the year I was in Denmark. I think I've seen our head coach more than my wife, she said to me. So yeah, and then next year I will go there full time. So yeah, when my wife gives birth in September, then we want to spend a bit time here in Germany, and then in February I go there full time as a head of analysis or head of performance. So yeah, it developed quickly and not like I expected. It was more
No,
like, just try it out and see. But it all
yeah,
started with Twitter. That's
how
the
it
bottom
goes.
line of it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? With COVID, there seems to have been a lot more opportunities, I guess, for remote working in football, scouting, and data analysis. I presume, given the time it was, the Russian jobs, CSK Moscow and Sochi, were they 100% remote, or was there some time that you went? Yeah, they were.
And it's not just the remote, which was different to my job now, because in the end, my job now in Viborg is also remote. I've been there a lot of times, but still I've worked from home more than I was there, of course, but it's more like also the involvement is totally different. So at Moscow, I don't think that any player knew me. It was just like that. I didn't even was contracted at them directly. It was more like that I was the side stuff of the head of analysis.
Yep.
And now I'm basically involved in everything. I can talk to the players, to the coaches. I sit in the same office as the coaches, so it's a totally different involvement which took place now. Yeah, and I think COVID helped, of course, to get a foot in, but I also tell a lot of people that ask me how to start in football and so on, that it's not easy, because I get a lot of people who write me that they have problems working remote, because the clubs, especially the smaller clubs, from even smaller, I think Denmark is quite a really professional league and a really on the uprise, but there are also some smaller countries, and the clubs, they were not prepared to have a remote working guy from different countries. And if you don't have the infrastructure, then it's not good for both the scout or the analyst doesn't feel involved, and the club maybe pays for someone who they don't really use. So it's not that easy. It looks easier. I can pay someone from Germany, from France to do some stuff, but you need to prepare it on both sides.
Yeah, because I'm sure we'll come on to the role shortly, but I guess quite a lot of that is how you communicate and how you talk to players, how you talk to coaches, and how you present information. If you're doing that remotely, or sometimes literally just sending an email or something, it can be quite difficult, I guess, to get the context across.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's maybe the hardest part of working only remote, to really get the trust also of the players, because one of my tasks is also doing the individual analysis for the players. And of course, if they've never seen you, that's nearly impossible to get. And of course, I was not a professional player. That makes it even harder, because if I would be like Zidane, it also works remote, but not from a German guy who was like 29 years when he joined them. And if they have never seen him, it's not working. So that's the most important thing, to be there as much as possible and get to know each other, trust each other. And I think that's the main reason why it is so important to also go there.
Yeah. So you mentioned Twitter is where it all started. Unsurprisingly, as a German coach, your Twitter handle is Gegenpressing91. For anyone who would like to follow, we will put that in the comments of the thread. Talk to us then about Twitter. Then how it sort of started. How did you approach that? I take it you never went with the intent of getting huge numbers of followers, but was it just about showing the content that you were interested in at the start?
Yeah, I think the thing with Twitter and all the social media is that I felt always that I was a bit more interested in football at the average guy. Also in school, everyone likes football, we know that, but I was always a bit more interested. But I've never worked out like Twitter. I've never had it. I think I installed it on my mobile phone like 2016, but I've just for like, it was like a lottery where you needed to make it a like. So I've never used it. And then like 2019, when I was coaching, I looked for some exercises and some input from tactical side. And I discovered a German football blog maybe similar what you're doing. And
Yeah.
I thought, okay, maybe that's a good time to start writing for them. And then I had to make my Twitter account active again because they said that Twitter is their main communication channel. So I have to have one to communicate and share it. And from there it started. First, it was just some articles about tactics and training, but then at some point the whole world of data visualizations opened to me, and I thought, okay, there are a lot of guys that are like me, which I didn't know before. But I thought that I liked it. So there were a lot of good guys, but I thought, okay, all these data visualizations, these shot maps, and then they maybe look productive, but they are not really eye pleasing at that time. It also changed, but it was 3 years ago. So I just tried to do stuff that, because I'm also interested in art or in doing something in an eye pleasing way, and that's how these assist and goal maps started that I did. And I think this was my breakthrough, because I'm even selling posters of them nowadays, and the people love it. I don't have one of Rangers yet, I think, so that's maybe a problem. Otherwise, it could be a good marketing now. But yeah, and if you make like an assist map of all Messi assists for Barcelona, which was mind blowing, and had like over 300, and no one ever did it. Of course, I think in like 5 or 6 months, I got like 6 or 7K, and when you have this amount of followers, it goes automatically. You probably know it. So that was the start of it. And there was really a time where I did nothing else on Twitter, just creating these assist maps, and I did it manually. I watched all the clips. So for example, if there was like Kaká from Milan and I wanted to, there's no data from 20 years ago. So I had to go on YouTube, type in Kaká all assists, and when I'm lucky, there was a compilation, then it went quite quickly. If not, then I had to go through every game manually and plot the assists. So it was a big effort. That's also where my friends, when I come sometimes back at home, and then they tell me, you're so lucky to work in football. And it's not luck, it was for 2 or 3 years I sacrificed. So every evening I sat on the sofa, all do this stuff, and that's how it started. And I didn't get money for it, of course. Twitter is not they don't give you money for it. It was just like to get a bigger audience. And
okay. So you mentioned now you're now head of performance and analysis at Viborg in Denmark. For those listening that are maybe not sure what performance analysis is, the hope is that the Tactics Talk podcast has provided a little bit of performance analysis over the years for Rangers. But in terms of a professional context, could you give us just a quick rundown of what performance analysis actually is within football?
Yeah, I think it's basically limitless. It can go in every direction. I can say for me, what I've done is mainly opponent analysis and own team analysis. Of course, I think this is the biggest part, especially the opponent part. So this was for 2 years my main role, that I watched games from the next opponent, prepared a presentation, showed it to our coaching staff, either by a video call or when I was there in person. And then they presented it 1-to-1 to the players, where you can already guess that it is important in my job to do it, to simplify a lot of stuff, because the coaches, maybe they understand it, even if I make it more complicated, but the players, most of them, they don't want to have it with all these big words and long stuff. So but then it's also conceptual stuff. For example, we have a lot of key performance indicators that define our game. So when we lose a game or when we win a game, no matter, we look at our KPIs to evaluate how we performed. Of course, the result is important, but this is, of course, expected goals. I think this is maybe the more mainstream one, but we also have stuff like how many opponents we bypassed and so on. But these KPIs, they were not there when I joined Viborg, so I grew them, I created them in combination with the stuff. But it can also be stuff like, we're looking for a new set piece coach for next season, and I took the calls with the applicants.
Okay.
Can also be individual stuff when players come to me and they say, okay, I felt that last 2 or 3 weeks my performance dropped a bit. Can you maybe look for some data or for some clips that confirm it or don't confirm it? So there's a lot of stuff that just develops in the daily routine. It goes by filming the games and the trainings. I'm not doing it, but someone needs to do it. So we have a student now, or since last season, who does it. So there are a lot of tasks that normally you need more people for it, but of course, and this is not because it's Denmark. I think Denmark in this part is really modern, but also a lot of big clubs in Germany, they don't have more than 2 or 3 analysts. So that's the reality. It sometimes looks different when you just look at the size and the budget of the club, but and then there is the big thing of data engineering and data modeling, which for us is a bit a side task right now because I'm not that good at it and we don't have a data scientist yet. But if we had one, of course, then it's about creating your own data models, maybe creating your own XG model and not relying on, this is a bit future music, but of course that's maybe an own department, you can say. So my part is more the analysis and video performance, and the other one is the data part, which goes aligned in some parts, but is still different.
Still needs to be separate. Yeah. Okay. So how much involvement, you mentioned the players coming to you, does that happen a lot, or do you find that you're maybe dealing more with the coaches, and then it's maybe like you mentioned there, maybe the players might not be maybe not interested is maybe the wrong word, but maybe they prefer to focus just on their game. So how do you present things to them? How do you keep it simple?
Yeah, I think it's different to every player, of course. I think we have quite an intelligent squad. There's also a reason why we were so successful in the last few years, because most players, let's say we have a 22-player squad, and I think that 15 of them, they're really interested, one more, one less, but that's maybe the core of players that constantly having talks with me. And yeah, of course, you need to be really individual with everyone, because the one guy, he just wants to see his numbers, assists, goals, shots. The other one, you can really dive really deep and show him how many players he bypasses, what is his his chance creation looking like. And some, they just want to see videos, some want to see negative clips to improve, some of them they just improve by seeing positive examples. But this develops, after some talks you get a bit of a grip of who needs what. And I think the most important thing is I never wanted to force someone into it. Whenever I came to Viborg, I wrote the players 1 week before that I'm coming next week or in 2 weeks. If you want to have a meeting about some data, video clip stuff, write me an email or write me WhatsApp. Tell me what you want to see, or maybe just show me whatever you want. And then we did it. And after the first asking, it was maybe 6 players. Second time it was 8, then 10, and now basically the whole squad wants to have a meeting. So but there, of course, it's more like also a lot of private chat. So that's why I always say that also for an analyst, the social communication and the social skills part is really important. So if you're just sitting in front of your laptop and you can't really, you have no empathy, then it's really hard to do the job. A lot of people don't have it, so that's why they work just in the data department, because they don't have connections to the players. But for me, I like to have these conversations, but then I also need to to be able to talk to them, and not just also to do with respect. I think it goes either way. When I started, I had way too much respect, because I'm coming from an amateurish football level. I've never done anything in football before, and then you come to Viborg, and we also had some players like J. Roy Crow, who played for Leeds, some players from the Eredivisie, and then I came in and I was really shy to tell them what they did wrong or what they should do better, because I felt I was not in the position to do it. But I got good feedback, and that gave me a bit of confidence. And then I realized that the players, they see me as a full staff member that I am, and then of course they accept what you say and they think you know more. And but this is a process that's normal.
Of course, yeah. So it sounds very, very varied then. What about match day? What's a sort of typical match day for yourself as a performance analyst? Is it more quieter for you and you do things maybe the day before and the day after, or are you still involved on a match day?
It is actually a bit quieter, which of course is the reason that I'm not always in Viborg in the last 2 years. So of course we didn't implement a routine that involves me on match day. That's why we added the second person to film the game, because we're doing halftime analysis, quite detailed. So we're using the pictures that the guy films in the first half. Actually right now it's more like I'm sitting next to our sporting director and having a bit more, more an observing role, that sometimes in halftime I tell our head coach 1 or 2 things that I observe, but it's more like really just watching the game. Starting next season or next year when I'm full-time there, I think that we will change a bit, because we also want to do some live analysis, not just with video but also with data. And of course that's something that you need to organize, and I think then my role during the game will be a bit bigger. But right now it's rather the day off for me, which is also good, because like you said, the days before and the days after, they're quite busy, because we meet in after the game on the first day, so the players have a day off mostly on the second day after match day. So I need to prepare everything for the next day, and when the game is at 6 in the evening and then we leave, maybe it's an away game, you basically need to do it all in the team bus, so that can be a bit busy. So
how difficult is the opposition analysis piece, from I guess for someone coming into Denmark, maybe not knowing huge amounts about Danish football, to then having to know a lot about every club quite quickly? How challenging was that to get up to speed, and what are the sort of key things that you look for in each club?
Yeah, it was really challenging the first month. So when I look back and I have a folder with all the old opponent analysis that I did like in the first 10 or 12 weeks, and it's not comparable, not from the presentation, not from how I illustrated it with the animations, but also not from the quality of the analysis. Because of course I did a bit of research before, but the good thing is it's only 12 teams in the Superliga, so that makes it a bit easier. But now, where I've seen all teams playing for the last 2 years or 3 years, and the league is not changing that much, teams going up and down, yes, but now I know how every team plays, and that's a good thing in Denmark. Most teams, they have quite a good playing style. So there's not a lot of teams with long balls and second balls. So they all play really a good football, which makes it interesting to analyze, because you have teams, they have really good build-up structures, good rotations, and it's not like you watch it and you think, okay, it's just about winning the duels and that's it. So it's really, for most teams, it's a good thing to analyze them, because it's challenging. But of course, the most challenging thing, like I said, is that I need to break down maybe 3 full games that I watch into a presentation of 6 to 8 minutes. Where you miss out on not everything, a lot of things, but you need to be confident that those things that you don't put in, they are not important, because you can't put a light on everything. But this comes from time to time, this confidence that you're able to miss out stuff. Maybe I didn't touch on their crosses because I feel it won't be important. And then when we concede from a cross, then you feel a bit sad for the day. But that's how it is.
It's a judgment call, yeah. One thing that Rangers, I guess, the challenge that Rangers have to face is in Scotland, we will have 65, 70% of the ball. We're facing a lot of low blocks. And then when we go on to the European stage, or we play against Celtic, it's much more even. Sometimes even we will be playing in a low block. How do you analyze those games? If you're watching, I don't know, say you were watching Rangers play, how would you pick the sort of key games to watch from a club? Would you look at maybe a game against someone who is better than them and someone who is worse, or would you just pick a sort of sample?
Yeah, I think a good example how we did it or how we needed to do when we played in Europe last season and we played West Ham in the playoffs, who finally won the whole thing, which wasn't really, you couldn't see it when they played against us. It was sometimes, I mean, the results were quite clear, but the games were closer.
Yep.
Of course, we tried to look at games against, maybe I looked at a cup game where they played like a lower tier team because we knew they probably have more of the ball. I didn't watch the game when I played Man City because, you know, I thought that would not be relevant for us. But then, of course, that's also part of my job that sometimes it runs out completely different. You know, everyone expected West Ham to have the ball against us, but when we played their first game in London Stadium, first 20 minutes, we were dominating. We had 65% of the ball, and they were dropping in the mid block or low block. So it was good for us, but sometimes you spend like 2 weeks preparing for a game, and then it runs different. But overall, I think that we try to look. So I try mainly in league games, league opponents. I try to look at games if it's possible where they played an opponent that plays a similar formation what we do. So I don't really like to look at games if we play, for example, Copenhagen, and they played the last game against a team that played when was a back five, which we never do. It doesn't really make sense because we know that Copenhagen, they attack different against the back five, they defend different. So that's maybe my biggest thing that I try to do, look at teams that they played with a similar formation, similar style of play. So for Rangers, of course, if you play Celtic, it makes sense to look at Celtics games in Europe where they also face some better teams and not look how they did against the Hearts or Aberdeen.
Okay. So, and you mentioned your visualizations, which you obviously became known for on Twitter. One of my favorites is you plotted every single nutmeg that Lionel Messi had done at Barcelona, which was quite good. In terms of how you use that then for the players, you mentioned it's much simpler. I assume you don't create those visualizations for the players. That would take you too much time. Is it much more video based then, or just the straight numbers?
Yeah, it is. I think for one or two players, I once did it because they wanted to hang it up in their room. I think the players, they left us, or when a player hit like a trademark. But it's just too time consuming. And, you know, the big advantage of doing it manually is that I can add the curves of the lines, which of course looks great because you don't have it when you just program it. But for the insights, for performance analysis, it doesn't change too much. So, you know, mostly because I know our game and the players, they also know the passes. So I think they have quite a good feeling of which line is which ball they played. I think players have quite a good visual memory. So they know if a line is across or not, even if it's not curved. So it's just too time consuming. But of course, sometimes this manual experience that I have in plotting it helps me, because sometimes when our wingers, for example, they have the feeling that the body position that they receive the ball is suboptimal, so they always receive it with the back to the opponent. There is still no accurate data, at least not for the providers we work with the body position. It is there, but it's not 100% accurate. And then, of course, sometimes I just watch the videos and plot every pass that he received, how the body position was. And of course, I can do it quicker because I did it in the past for these visualizations. So there, sometimes it helps, but in the day-to-day routine, no, not really.
No. Yeah, okay. Last question then. So obviously you mentioned you got your start on Twitter. Would you have any recommendations for any amateur scouts or analysts that are listening? Is there anything that you would have done differently, or anything that you would recommend as being important to them if they're looking to get into football?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's a question I get asked a lot, and it's not easy to answer because for me, like I said, it was easier because I had a real face account, which is also important because I know a lot of good analysts. When they started Twitter, they decided to do like an alter ego, was just like, that it's perfectly fine, but then of course it's harder to
Yeah.
get into contact. So that was good for me. But of course, I cannot recommend someone with like 50 followers and no profile picture to write to a sporting director or coach
Yeah.
if you can do some jobs. What I can recommend is just start something, find your niche, because if you try to analyze Man City's build up, it's fine, but everyone does it.
Everyone
So
does it.
maybe
Yeah.
that can be women's football, it can be youth league football, it can be Scottish football, because I felt that most people that pathway I followed in the last few years, they got successful by doing it different. Either by, I did it different because no one did the visualizations that I did. I'm not doing it anymore, but it helped me. And
Yeah.
if you focus on Asian football or African football, that's a niche. And if you're good in that, that helps, of course, but also just know your value, because I think that we have a big problem in the market of football business in getting underpaid. You don't see it as a casual when you look at the player salaries and the coaching salaries. Yeah,
Yeah.
but this is maybe just a part of a football club. And I know a lot of scouts, analysts, they don't get paid, or they just get paid like a really small compensation for what they're doing. And this comes from both sides. The clubs are not willing to spend more, but also the people, yeah, there are a lot of people who would do it for
Yeah.
if scout one or analyst one is not doing it for £10 a month, then the other one is doing it. So they can afford to have this approach, and I think this is a big problem, a structural problem. And I can just say, know your value. If you're good and you're confident in doing it, then say I want to get money for my work, and because otherwise you will end up in a dead circle for many years. Some people, they think, maybe I can do it voluntary and I get a foot in, but you never get the foot out again, and you stuck in this voluntary circle for many years, and then it's not good. So
No.
that would be my big advice, to find your niche and know your value.
Thank you very much. Okay, Marius, that will do us. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. It was a real pleasure to talk to you about performance analysis. Thank you.
Same.
And once again, thank you all for listening and watching. If you'd like to follow Marius, you can do on Twitter. It's Gegenpressing91. I'll put that link into the show's comments. But thank you all once again.
That was a Heart and Hand production.